welcome everybody. I am joined by Jono Teppler. Jono is a rugby referee and is currently on the national panel of German referees in Germany. He has represented Germany at various rugby competitions such as the Dubai Sevens, the Amsterdam Sevens, and the Roma Sevens. He's also a very active referee in the local Bundesliga and on the Sevens circuit in Germany. So welcome, Jono. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you was because you are a referee, and due to the nature of the subject of physical education, there's always rules that need to be adhered to. Often at school, the teacher is in charge of administering these rules or creating rules. And I thought it would be interesting to have your opinion coming from a somewhat more qualified position. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions which are maybe not exactly related to refereeing in the beginning, but if you could maybe just explain your background to us and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, firstly, let me say that even though some things aren't related to refereeing, there's a lot of things from your life in general which definitely apply in the refereeing field, especially when it comes to the way that you conduct yourself. Just like a lot of sportsmen, a lot of sportswomen and different athletes, just in the way that they express themselves on the field and their personality comes out in the field, it's a very similar situation with referees. So a lot of your life also comes out on the field. When it comes to me personally, I am South African, much like yourself. I've lived in Germany for nearly 4 years, and I've been refereeing in South Africa at schoolboy level and at sort of a low senior level. And since I've moved to Germany, refereed in the Bundesliga and at, like you mentioned, various tournaments and competitions around mostly Europe, but also had the chance to go to Dubai, and currently sort of at the bottom level of international refereeing within the European leagues and European circuits. So that's my background. Beyond that, I'm qualified in human movement science, so sports science essentially, and a very physical and active person, which is something that gives me a big benefit with refereeing, but also keeps me quite interested in refereeing and in sports in general.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we'll touch on a bit of fitness and maybe some self-discipline. At school, we often talk about self-management skills, and again, being a referee, you are obviously not only managing yourself and the assistant referees, but you also have 30 men who are, or maybe it's only the sevens game and you've got 14 men or women that you have to control. So I can imagine that you've had a lot of practice of controlling crowds.
Yeah, so sometimes it's not just the 14 men or women on the pitch, or the 30 men and women on the pitch. Sometimes it's the characters that are on the side of the pitch, the coaches and the supporters, players who, I don't know any of those. If you know of any of them, but I don't. Sometimes it's about managing more than just what goes on the pitch, and it certainly is a very difficult task. It requires a lot of emotional control on your side as a referee, and I think the trick with refereeing, or the important thing to remember, is that at any given moment, the most focus can be on you as one person in the middle of the pitch, and it's not just 30 people looking at you. There's an additional 10, 15 people on the sideline in terms of the coaches, and sometimes up to a few thousand people on the sideline with all their focus on you. And the way that you express yourself on the field is a very important indicator of how well you are actually refereeing.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you are qualified in human movement science, and that is it's a pretty common track for a lot of physical activity or physical education teachers, like myself as well. So let's rewind even further, and could you tell us about your experiences in PE at school?
You get, majority of the time in South Africa, you get schools that are extremely invested in sport, and they've got very good sport programs. if you liken it to the schools in the United States, where there's intense football programs, intense athletic programs, where children are essentially part-time athlete and part-time student. I wasn't 100% that path when it comes to school sports, but I was always involved in every single type of sport. We're very lucky in South Africa that sport is a very big part of school. Every afternoon is spent next to the sports field or on the sports field. Every Saturday morning is spent at the school playing sport. There's an element of pride in representing your school at all these events. So sport has always been a very big part of my life. Exercise has always been a very big part of my life. And with the viewpoint of sort of improving the lives of other people, that has always driven me towards being involved in sport, and specifically into the field of human movement science, where we look at athletes and people that are recovering from terrible knee injuries, being in a car accident. Perhaps they had a traumatic event on their head and they need to learn to walk again. So using sport to try and improve people's lives has always been something that I've been passionate about, and it's what's always driven me towards that. In the same way that sport gives a lot of people hope, it gives a lot of people a sense of meaning, and it gives a lot of people a breakaway from their normal life problems.
Yeah, so you mentioned that your school maybe wasn't a very sport-focused school, but you remember your PE teachers or any lessons that you may have learned?
They were always the best teachers, I'll tell you that. Yeah, I definitely do. I think especially at primary school, where the sporting activities you did was a lot more diverse and a lot more enjoyment focused versus a specific sport, which can sometimes happen. I definitely remember all of them. They were fun-loving people. I think that they had the chance to express themselves in a sporting environment, which is something that a lot of teachers don't have the chance to do, but they could, and they were always fun-loving. They were always enjoyable to be around. Some of them were quite strict, but strict in the sense that you knew they needed to push you in order for you to perform or for you to realize your full potential. And your full potential doesn't mean being the best. Doesn't mean being the best in the team, doesn't mean being the fastest or the strongest. It just meant potentially overcoming a certain fear or trying your absolute best at something, and not just looking at it going, I can't do it. I can't jump off there. I can't swim. I can't throw the ball into the basket. It was, they were always characters that made sure that regardless of how good or how bad you were, unfortunately for some kids, that you always tried your best and you always enjoyed it. And that was something I'll always remember from them. They always brought that enjoyment factor, and they made it. They didn't make it about an actual result. They made it about you as a student or as a pupil achieving the best that you can achieve.
Yeah, I think it's always important to focus on your own progress and your own development, because everyone is different and everyone learns differently. And I always make the connection with my students that some students may excel at reading, some might be really good at mathematics or at spelling, but others might be able to perform in different endurance tasks, or are really good sprinters, or are good at ball games. So I think it's important that the teacher also knows every student and knows where their strengths are, and also knows when and how far to push them. Let's talk about you making the move from being an active sporting participant into becoming a referee. So at the moment, a lot of my students are they're grade 1 to grade 5, so they are still quite young in their sporting careers. And part of my job, or part of my goal, is to just try and give them a great learning experience and to provide them with opportunities in different motor skills and different types of games, with games from all around the world. But becoming a referee is obviously a decision that you made on purpose. So could you please tell us the meaning behind your decision to become a referee?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, for me it was a very purposeful decision. I made the choice. I'm still fit. I'm still healthy. I don't have any serious injuries from the sport. So I'm very fortunate that if I had to take the decision to play the sport, I could still do that. But I made the decision to referee out of my own. Some players don't have that luxury. Some are hit with really bad injuries and they can't physically take the contact anymore, and they use it as another way to be involved in the game. For me, the decision to be a referee was is twofold. One reason was obviously rugby is quite a physically intense sport, not just in the physical aspect of it, but it can also be quite time consuming. You need a lot of focus, a lot of discipline to get yourself to the gym on the days that you don't train with your team. You need a lot of discipline and time to take the trainings in the evenings, especially if you're at a more amateur level. You need the physical time and effort, which not everyone can do when they're balancing a normal job, they're balancing potentially a family, and they're balancing other elements in their life. So that along with the physical risk of injury, which I'm not afraid of, but just would set me back a little bit, was one reason. And the second reason was that I still wanted to be involved in the game, and I would rather be a referee that is actively involved in matches and can physically improve matches by being a referee than be someone who sits on the sideline and complains about the problems we have with referees, which is a very easy thing to do in sports. You can very easily turn to the one referee and say, the referee is the reason my team lost today. It's the reason that person is made one bad decision over 80 minutes, and that's the reason we lost. I didn't want to be a person like that. I want to be a person that contributes. And like I said earlier, with sport, I want to improve things the whole time. And refereeing allows me to really be involved in the physical action. I'm in the middle with the players, but at the same time, I'm also improving the game by being there for them.
Yeah. So I recently spoke to my students about the importance of rules and following rules and how without rules, a game can't function. So you've just mentioned something quite interesting. You've mentioned about like the focus of not only the players and the spectators and the coaching staff all focusing on the decisions that you make, but how do you mentally prepare yourself, or how do you, or maybe it's an and question, and how do you deal with situations from maybe unhappy players, unhappy coaches, when decisions haven't gone their way?
So in terms of how I mentally prepare for matches, I think the most important thing I need to do is to do preparation beforehand, and I need to get to a game and arrive at a match knowing that I've done physical and sort of mental preparation for the teams, tactical preparations. Referees do look at the way a team plays. They would look at videos of previous teams' matches, and they would try to understand the tactics of a certain team. Maybe they pass the ball to a certain player all the time, and that player always gets tackled, or maybe a certain player always tackles very dangerously. So you need to manage him or her a little bit more carefully. So mentally preparing, I'll always make sure that I've analyzed both teams that I am going to referee, and that I've spoken to both captains and coaches before the game. It's very important because they also they are going to try their utmost best to win, and you need to respect that, but also make sure that they understand the law and understand the rules of the game. But you also need to allow them the chance to play the game. So mentally preparing is about analyzing both teams and understanding how they play, having a good relationship with the coaches and with the players, especially the captains, because they are your counterparts on the field. And then for me personally, the way I mentally prepare myself is I get myself into the same mindset as a player, which I think is very important, helps me when I referee. When rugby players prepare for a game, it's a very emotional, it's a very passionate, it's a very physical game. It's a game that is really played on physical emotion, it's played on your adrenaline, and you need to get yourself into a mindset where you can understand the same, or for me at least, I can understand the adrenaline and I can understand the psychological frame of mind that some of the players are in when I go and take the field. So for me, along with all the analysis and preparation, I get myself psyched up and I get myself excited about the game onto the same level as the players, because it helps me to understand the game more. It helps me to understand the players a little bit more. And that assists me then in those situations when I see a very difficult scenarios. In terms of managing those players in that environment, it's extremely tricky. You have to always be extremely calm. And one thing I've learned is, if you are going to get into those scenarios, count to 3 before you make them. That just helps you to calm down and be very clear about the way that you are communicating your decision or about the decision you will take.
Yeah. So I think it's very important. And again, I'm seeing quite a few connections with the way that I think and the way that you act on the sporting field. So I recently mentioned that if you were in a game and things weren't going according to plan, the first thing to do is don't panic and try and stay as calm as possible, because as soon as there's another person, losing their cool or losing control of their emotions, it means that not only is the mindset lost, but also any good work that they are doing is being taken away.
Yeah. 100%.
So I've known you for a few years now, and I know that you have refereed in some pretty, I'm going to call it hectic,
quite intense matches.
Very intense matches, where there's maybe some local rivalries, or there's, as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of passion, a lot of heart that the players, not only do they give the heart to themselves, but to their teammates, and that's the nature of rugby. But how do you deal with pressure? And it can be pressure from yourself, it can be an external pressure. What is so you said take a step, or take a step back and have a breath, but are there any other maybe advice that you could give to the students?
Yeah, when it comes to, and it's a very difficult topic. It's if you look at a lot of athletes, you look at a lot of people in business, you look at a lot of teachers, everyone experiences different sorts of pressures in their way of life, and you see that in the way that they react. You see people will react very badly when they're under pressure. Some people will make mistakes. In sport, you will see that very often. Players are under pressure and they lose the basic skill to pass the ball. They lose the basic skill to kick the ball. They lose the basic skill to run or to think about what to do. And it's very, very tricky. And unfortunately, the only way that you learn how to handle pressure is to be exposed to pressure and to make those mistakes in pressure. If you take pressure and look at it as the correct, as a tool to help you, then you suddenly start to enjoy it a lot more and you start to make better decisions. For me, I look at big matches now where I go, oh, there's 2,000 people, which in German rugby is quite big. Oh, there's 2,000 people. It's a big match. There's some TV cameras there. The coaches are shouting at me. The players are shouting. I'm going, this is such a great moment for me. I have 2,500 people all looking at me, and I'm going to absolutely make the best decision. So it's about changing your mindset and about enjoying those moments versus looking at them as something that is going to hold you back and destroy you. Yes, you might make mistakes, but you had a chance to really enjoy, really learn from something and grow as a person, as a referee. And it's just about changing the way you look at it. Pressure can be a very, very valuable tool in life and in sport.
So I like how you mentioned learning to deal with pressure can make you a better sportsman or a better person. Yeah. And it does happen quite often when somebody is, or somebody who maybe isn't so familiar with a skill or a sport, and it's their turn to perform and everybody's watching and they make a mistake and they feel like they failed. And for me, it's very important that, they at least try to take that first step. And that first step is trying. And once you try, you've done it. And something else I spoke about recently was it is okay to make mistakes. And
100%.
and making mistakes is how we learn. This month we are making quite a big focus on being a good communicator. So if you could give my students some tips on being a good communicator, whether it's in the classroom with their teachers, whether it's their classmates, whether it's during a game or at break time, what are some good tips for being a good communicator?
I think for me, from my point of view, being a good communicator, especially from a rugby point of view, is you need to always control your emotion, and you always need to control the tone of how you say something. Understand the tone and understand the emotion you are using, and try to really think about the way you say something. The second part for me would be as direct as possible with it. From a rugby referee point, you sometimes referee players from 4 or 5 different countries, but the only language you all speak is English because it's the most commonly used language, or it's very easy to communicate. If you are going to communicate with someone, remember that it's not just your mouth that communicates, it's also your body that communicates. It's also your eyes that communicate. So if I'm standing at you and I'm speaking to you like this and I'm not really interested, I don't think you're going to believe me. And I don't think you're going to trust anything I say. But if I look at you and I say to you, the key to communication is to make good eye contact with someone, to stand up straight, look at them in the eye, and really mean what you say, it suddenly changes the way that you speak.
So the way I analyze what you've just said is that controlling emotions, first of all, is very important. And that when you do respond, you've got to make sure that you're honest in your approach and that it is a meaningful message that you're giving.
100%. Yeah.
In our school, we talk about whole body listening. So it's, where are my eyes? What is my body doing? As you mentioned, about actually paying that person the respect, actually being there for that person. So I think that we are definitely on the same page in that situation. And at the same time, I think it's so important that when you do, or when you are going to say something to someone, you always need to take a second and think, okay, this person that is going to hear this, listen to it, and they are going to react. And every person could react differently. So it's very important that you choose your words wisely and that you actually do think before you speak. If they were interested in, looking at joining a sport as a referee, or moving away from being an active player to a referee, what advice would you give to students in this time?
Firstly, I would say that it's an absolutely perfectly fine thing to want to be a referee. There's no problem with being a referee, and we need more strong people in the world that want to take up refereeing. We need people that want to be involved in the game on that aspect. So that's most important thing, is don't look at refereeing as something negative. It's an extremely important part of the game. It's an extremely enjoyable part of the game, and it's something that every single sport needs. We say in rugby, no ref, no game. And if we don't have referees, we can't play the sport. So it's a very important part of the game. People don't think of it as important, but it is extremely important. And it's a fantastic opportunity to be involved in the sport. So have a very positive mindset about what refereeing can be. It's not what you see on TV in the Bundesliga, where players are running and shouting and screaming and people are throwing things at the referee. It's not always that. It can be the complete opposite. But you need to decide that you want that to be that. The second thing I would say when it comes to refereeing is just get involved. If it means that you are carrying water for the main referee, if it means that you are sitting in the same changing room and understanding how they prepare for a game, if it means that you are watching them on TV, get involved in some way, because you can always learn something from them. And then the third thing I would say, and it's very much about the pressure topic we spoke about earlier, but look at those pressure and those pressure moments as a positive and as a chance to improve yourself the whole time. As a referee, and especially as a young referee, you are going to be You are going to be challenged. You are going to be placed in very difficult situations. You are going to make mistakes, but you are also going to learn, and you also are going to improve every single day. So learn to appreciate learning, get involved as much as possible, and just look at it in a very positive light, and as a very important part of the sport you play. And I think that you'll enjoy it so much more than the players sometimes, because they have pressure to perform, referees have pressure to perform, but a lot of the time there's more pressure on a player than there is on a referee. So it can be a fun, enjoyable way of being involved in the game. You just need to want it to be enjoyable for yourself.
Well, many wise words there, Jono. Thank you very much. So I am going to be ending the interview shortly, but in a general sense, in sporting life, in physical education, in enjoying school, what tips or maybe a final word of advice in a more general sense could you give to my students?
As a general tip to any student in school?
Yeah.
Respect your teachers. They are extremely, and I do mean that. I know we joke about that now, but I do mean that. Our teachers are incredibly important in every single day, in our everyday life. A lot of kids will look at their teachers 15, 20, 30 years down the line and think, oh, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, she was such a great teacher. She taught me great things. So really respect your teachers. They've learned a lot from life, and they are passing on their knowledge to you, and take that from them. Second thing is, I would say, is get yourself involved in as many things as possible, in sport, in culture, in art, in politics, in academics at school, because the only way that you are going to learn who you are as a person is if you learn what you like and what you don't like. If there's a chance to take on a new sport, try it. If you don't like it, that's fine. If there's a chance to learn how to sing or learn how to paint or learn how to draw, try it. If you're not very good but you enjoy it, carry on, because you are constantly changing every single day as you develop, and you only learn what you take on. If you take on an opportunity to learn, then you will learn. If you don't take an opportunity, you will never learn from it. So take all the opportunities you can. School is a great platform to do that. The teachers are there to support you. And if there's an opportunity, grab it with both hands.
Well, thank you very much. I'd be very happy for you to join us in a few of our PE lessons, and you can also give the students a few lessons on communication and respect and just appreciating life. So thank you very much. It was great to see you and great to talk to you, and good luck with the refereeing when it all starts up again. We don't know when rugby will start up again, but I'm sure, just like the players, you're also itching to get back out there.
100%. I can't wait.
Yeah. All right, mate. Thank you very much. And
cool. Thanks so much. Cheers, man.